Okay, I see him. I see him. I'm gonna bring you on, Max. So sorry about all this. I tell you, this Instagram is crazy. Okay, just click accept, Max. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Hey, man, I tell you, this technology is something else.
Well, I guess it's like everything else. It's simple if you know how to do it.
Yeah, it can be complicated though. Trust me.
What do you want? You want me to be in portrait mode like this?
Yeah.
Does this work better? Okay.
That way everybody don't see you sideways. Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right, let me make a little more room to turn this.
Okay.
There we go. I have to put it in some kind of a stand, otherwise I start gesticulating while I'm talking and the camera's moving all over.
Okay.
So,
let me do the entrance really quickly. Oh, here, it won't take but a second.
If you want to see some great interviews, then you have come to the right place. Pro wrestlers, soap stars, singers, and celebrities, all right here on Skype. This is Chris Van Vliet, and you are listening to the WSE Lounge. Hey.
Okay. And he said Skype, but now we're on Instagram Live, so no longer on Skype. So
all right.
For that, okay.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I want to welcome to you. He is a writer, a director, an actor. He is known as Detective Stan Wojo from the Bernie Miller Show, and he's also known as Mike Corbin from General Hospital. Please welcome the one and only legendary Max Gail.
Hello. You make me think of that Chris Christopherson song. You know, he's a poet. He's a what I can't even say. I know the lyrics, but I can't say them right now. You know, taking every wrong direction on his lonely way back home.
Yeah.
They said he wrote that about Johnny Cash sometimes. But anyway, hi. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
That's good.
I get a little exasperated when the technology doesn't work, but I know I'm not alone in that. So.
Oh yeah, trust me, you're not. I've had different situations where I go to work with technology, and I fool with it for a couple of hours. Then there's one little button, and they say mash that button. Then I mash the button, and I'm like, really, you know? So,
all right.
How did you get started? Talk me through it.
How did I get started? In life?
Yeah.
With acting?
In acting.
You know, at a time when I got asked that a lot, I finally came down to sort of by drift and design as and sometimes you got to drift down the river and then something appears and, it wasn't like that would have been such a weird thing. My mother had been an actress as a young woman before she got married at 20, not quite 22, and proceeded to have 7 kids in 6 years. She had 3 sets of twins and a single. So, but she was active in the local, sort of volunteer theater, and she would go up to Stratford, Ontario. I remember around the time I was in high school, she'd go up there for the Shakespeare Festival. My dad had been a piano player and had a band in the big band days, and then he had a booking agency in Detroit. It was not, but if you asked anybody in my family who's the most likely to have I guess an acting career, would be well, they would have said either my brother or my twin sister, Mary. I was more of a science geek and more into sports, and but there were certain opportunities that opened up that I made I went for it because the other things that were maybe a more logical path for me to be on, they just weren't working out for me. They didn't appeal to me, so then along with that, then it's like you get a chance to connect with Danny Arnold, who, well, let's say this, I went in to read for understudy for a part in a play based on the novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest
Mm-hmm.
before the movie happened in San Francisco. And these guys had opened up a production, and they got a kind of a good review and stuff, and they were looking for understudies. And I went to read because I thought, well, that might be interesting. It was a rainy day. I didn't want to go to rugby practice. I was playing rugby at the time. And then the guy playing the part got fired because he had a kind of an artistic difference with one of the other actors. But he was a big weightlifter, and the other guy was tall and slender. And the rest of the cast had said, you know, it's okay to have artistic differences, but we can't be pushing each other around, you know. And I did that play for 2 years. I played the part of the Indian. For those who read the novel, which is narrated by the Indian, or saw the movie, in which my late but eventually became my dear friend Will Sampson played that part in the movie. And for me, it was like connecting to something about acting that's more about taking the mask off than putting the mask on.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those are going on in our lives. It's a universal thing, but with acting, you know, and connecting into you know, emotional stuff. And then so I followed it. I got a couple of parts in films that were cast in San Francisco, and then one of those directors invited me to come down, you know, to do a part in a pilot of a show called Canon. And then and also during that time I met people who were involved with the Actors Studio, which is one of the approaches to the real, you know, work of acting that goes back down the path through Russian theater and Greek, and you know, we've been doing this as a species. We've been around a long time, you know. Even if you take the shortest definite idea people cling to, that of how long humans have been on the planet, you know, or how long we've been here, even that is a long time compared to our normal ideas of history, you know. And so that was it. And I think I've been very fortunate to be involved with some great projects. And I've had sometimes I stepped away, particularly when one of my first, after the show, I got married and we had a child. And when our daughter was 8 months old, we found out that her mom had cancer.
Oh no!
And so there was 2 years of just dealing with that, you know, the kind of on and off. Oh, we're gonna beat it, you know, and then oh no, it's back. And then when her time came, then I was a single mom, I used to say then, because I was ready to be a dad. I was already in my early 40s, but I got my learning experience of what it is that moms come up with, and I you know, I had just had turned down things. I realized I can't do a series or something. I'm going to have a nanny raise my daughter. And so you know, it was about 5 years in there. I effectively dropped out. And when I came back, I remarried and had another child on the way. And I thought I'll go back to work. And I did a show with Frank Zappa's two oldest kids.
Mm-hmm.
In their minds and hearts, inspired by their family, but to the network, they kind of saw it as another, maybe Dweezil Zappa was another Kurt Cameron, and, you know, Moon was sort of along for the ride or something. And it was, the television had changed. I had changed. You know, my wife was African American. My family was what they call mixed. My certainly circle of friends had a lot of diversity in it, and television kind of went back to the old, pretty much all white TV. And as I say, I had changed in ways. So I had a while where I just, after that experience, left me kind of, you know, I mean, you know, looking back now, I know I just wasn't ready. It was the second time in my life I'd had a new wife and a new TV series and a new baby, and I wasn't going to take my eye off the ball like I felt maybe I did in the first case. And so you know, so I've had stretches where I stepped away, but always it's about coming in contact with other people who see that you can be a part of what they're doing. And, you know, you can't, it's pretty hard to do it without the writing. There are some performers who are just so magical that anything they say they could read the phone book, but I'm not one of those.
Oh yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
that's a longer answer. You know, you're going to learn.
yeah.
I don't do sound bites so much.
Well, I wanna say that, you know, I'm sorry about your wife. You know, your first wife.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know how cancer is. You know, I lost my dad, of course,
Uh-huh.
2 years.
Yes.
So, and I also, you know, something you were mentioning. That's another question I got. In 1970, when you were Chief Brondon in the
Yeah.
original stage production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, how would you say that it was different compared to other shows like sitcoms?
Well, first, let me just say that that wasn't the first stage production.
Okay.
The first one was the novel was the rights was bought by Kirk Douglas, and he wrote a play, or he didn't write a play. I'm sorry, he commissioned a play by the same fellow who ended up writing the book for Man of La Mancha. And his name just slipped out of my head, but I know it, and hopefully I'll come back and give him. And he wrote that play. It was happened on Broadway. Ed Ames played the chief. Gene Wilder played a character, Billy Bibbit. It ran for like 70 performances. It was the same year that John F. Kennedy was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more of a comedic. That Nurse Ratched was more like a comedic villain. You know, it had a different tone to it, and then that was that, and then some years later, my friend talk about The Break or whatever, but Lee Sankiewicz, a young starting director in San Francisco, and he and his friends did a production of the play
Mm-hmm.
that made it more like the book. For one thing, they brought in these passages because the chief who's narrating the book is having he's psychotic, and so he's seeing things. And anyway, they made it more like the book in a number of ways. More, they brought back in the suicide of one of the characters that had been taken out, and they got a great response. And in time, that became like the most produced play in the country. A lot of college campuses, and there was a production in New York that opened up, and I eventually went into that production for a while. So it was, at the time was a real look at kind of the world, and like maybe the people that are in the crazy house aren't as crazy as the rest of the world. It was that kind of flip,
Yeah.
So very small theater, very close to the audience, very, live theater is live. So then when it comes to, you asked about sitcoms, I did a couple of other more straight TV shows and played some bad guys in some cop shows and some things like that, but, and I think that Barney Miller was different from a lot of sitcoms, especially as we evolved, because in the beginning we did have a live audience like most shows, and usually they've got comedians there and maybe a band. They get everybody really, people are very excited because they're there from I'm going to move this a little bit so that it's not jerking around so much. Okay. A little more stable that way, I hope. So people are, they're so ready to laugh that sometimes maybe they laugh too easy or something, So, but in many ways, Barney Miller, because we ended up shooting all on the same set, and we stopped having the live audience, and we'd kind of go through it in order, but the audience became the camera people, so it wasn't like the joke. It was more like, well, what's the behavior that's going on? So let's see if I'm answering your question. How are they different? In some ways, acting is acting. I remember Barbara saying, somebody asked her, they asked me, how do you act Shakespeare? She said, you learn how to act and then you do Shakespeare. So, in some ways it's the same thing. It's like looking for truth through imaginary processes. But there was a time I remember when Jack Sue, he was concerned with were people really getting his humor, because the humor of his character was very dry. Often he would have a line kind of at the end of a scene,
Mm-hmm.
and then Yamana would have like, a short line or a word or something, but it would show that he had taken it all in and processed it in his own unique way, But Jack had done theater. He'd done Flower Drum Song on Broadway and stuff, and when we would rehearse, often we'd rehearse right up to that point, working out like who moves here and how do we get here and how do we make it like it just happened,
Yeah.
And we'd try out something, and then we'd try, and we would forget Jack's line because we knew that it was there. There was no need to rehearse it. He would kill it when the time came, Mm-hmm. And somebody said, I wonder if people are going to get it. And they said, oh, yeah, don't worry about it, Jack. They're going to get it. And he said, yeah, no, this was when we still had the audience. He said, I don't mean out there. And he gestured to the audience, where the audience sat. He
Mm-hmm.
said, I mean out there, out there, which actually you need to be smaller and less active,
Yeah. So in other words, he was basically putting his character out to where the people out there, actually related to his character, and they saw the pure emotion and the acting that he was doing.
Well, he was concerned, are they going to get it? Because he didn't have that immediate feedback and sense of where they were, but actually where they are is right there where the camera is. And even closer because the camera can come in on you, so it's just really about being present and authentic as you can be,
A lot of the fans in here have said, hey to you, Joshua and Kathy and Dottie and several others, and
I wish I could see them.
Yeah, they're leaving the questions in the comments. Yeah, you got one question from RH Fanatic.
All right.
Who is your favorite actor to work with on GH, Max?
Boy, I'll tell you, anytime I get a question of what's my favorite, it doesn't matter whether it's music or song or, or toilet paper or whatever, all I can think of it. Certainly Maurice and I had a beautiful connection, right from the
There you go.
and but everybody, especially all the people connected with this story, or let's say the ones I got to work with,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many stories on there and people but I didn't work with a lot of them, but I mean, they're so honest and generous, and there's a kind of an allegiance to the story. What's the story we're telling together? So all of those people, all of them, it was an extraordinary, wonderful experience to be a part of.
Okay, and my mom, Sunshine Redeem, she says you're a fantastic actor. Met you on GH. Do you see yourself acting in another soap opera one day?
That's interesting. That's your mom?
Uh-huh.
Did you say what's her name?
Her name is Sunshine Redeem, but her name is Faye.
Her name is Faye, but she's on there as Sunshine Redeemer. Huh?
Uh-huh.
I love that. That's great. I like your name too. You explained that to me when we were on the phone the other day. Grace is sufficient. And I like the understanding that goes with that. What was the question? Oh,
Uh, yeah. If do you see yourself acting in another soap opera one day?
all right. Well, okay. So, once you get working, it's fun to be working. I just saw my friend Greg Harrison just posted on Facebook. Hey, I'm going to be doing General Hospital. He's going to be picking up a character that was played by another
Oh,
actor. And he, I've known Greg a long time, long enough to just be kind of lifetime friends. It's not like we've hung out so much, but I have regard for him as a person and an actor, and he's going to be um, stepping in there. And I've thought about it. People have come up with lots of suggestions, like playing my twin brother or something like that. It seems to be, because there's a connection people make with the characters. As somebody said one time on one of these conversations, we watch you while we're eating dinner, so but I work is nice. It's nice to work, and I have kids and grandkids, and some of them are struggling with the coronavirus. So anything I can do to keep the wolf out by the mailbox and being able to provide a little help, that's helpful, because I never really, when I was doing Barney Miller, first of all, I wasn't making that much because those were different days, but also I never imagined what the future was bringing. So I put a lot of that into things that I thought were meaningful. I was single. I didn't have kids to feed. So I put a lot of that into documentaries and other things. And I just didn't foresee what dropping out would mean. So it's not like I got this big stash or anything. And so that, I've had that thought. My response has been like, maybe I could play Mike's twin sister,
yeah.
Since I have a twin sister, I would, she's about 5'2", but anyway,
on Twitter that Mark tweeted that out to you, that he would love to have you back on the show.
Well, I think there is that, and they Frank, the showrunner, who's a very talented director and person, and holds that whole cluster of talent together in a way, and say, oh, no, we're not done with you. I don't really know, I mean, it would be cool to come back and have some kind of visitation with Maurice, because but I'm not, it's the transition time, and I'm moving forward. That has occurred to me since the soaps are working and a lot of other shows aren't. And since there's been that kind of response, maybe somebody somewhere is saying, well, they've got a part coming up, and Max Gail seemed to be able to work with this medium, because not everybody can.
That's true. That's true.
I'd be open, but this was really a rare circumstance with this character and the relationships and all the good work that Ron Hale had done before, which I intentionally never watched, but I got that there was this person who had relationships, and I might have shortchanged in my mind at times. I think, I should have thought more about whatever that was, even though in my view, Mike had changed when he got into Gamblers Anonymous. That 12-step program can help people connect to, who they really are, or a new them or something. It's had a lot of meaning in a lot of people's lives, so that I didn't have to think, do I need to imitate this whole other person, But that was there as established relationships and all the people around that made all of that work so beautifully. But you got to be open, right? Right, Brian?
Yeah.
You gotta,
That's right. You gotta.
If a door opens, at least look.
Yeah, you have to, or you never know what it holds. You never know what's behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I am focusing a lot on, I would say, I guess, my music or my songs, or I had a time where I started to really process the deeper changes I was going through, or the path I was on. I'd always been able to write something in rhyme at Christmas time or something, but I I started doing that, and since I got through college and grad school playing pickup rock and roll bands and piano bars, I mean, I had, that's kind of where I was going when I did the Barney Miller pilot. I said, oh, great, I got this pilot. It'll give me enough money to go up and get a little place in Big Sur and write songs. And so, I'd kind of like to get into that time where if I'm going to fulfill any of those aspirations, not so much like throwing concerts or something, but just putting it out there in a way that people who might be touched by it or responsive to it, So I'm focused on that.
I wanted to ask you when you played Detective Stan Wojo, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce the last name because I have no idea. on the Barney Miller show, what was your favorite memory from the show?
Well, see, there we go again with favorites. It's a hard question for me to. There were a lot of outstanding moments and experiences. It was a great cast. The writing was incredible. Everybody was always trying to make a good TV show. Mm-hmm. I learned afterward. Sometimes I'd get on a set and I'd say, there'd be something that didn't quite make sense in the script that would be easy to fix. A hole, it's often called, oh, that's a hole, Mm-hmm. And often people would say, you think that's bad. You should have seen the hole in last, There was kind of sort of an attitude that, the people are smart on the coast, but out in the vast middle, nobody's paying attention or nobody understands or anything like that. And so that was never Danny's, from the start, from the top or the center of it. I loved the way there was an outstanding memory I had that's kind of timely now, where we did a show where Ron Glass's character Harris had come upon to a crime scene, and I think that there was a detail, even though he had his badge or something, but anyway, he got shot at. Mm-hmm. He got shot at because another cop just assumed since he was black that he must be a perpetrator. And the design of the show was he comes in, in the beginning of the show, and he's very upset, and he kind of grabs some things and says what happened and stomps out. And the rest of the show is the rest of the cast kind of working out. Have we heard from Harris and whatever? And it got around as we did till maybe 1:32 in the morning when the last pages kind of came down, and we'd do the end of the show. Mm-hmm. But Ron's, his lines, we came back in, he said, I'm sorry, guys. But, and Ron, who was not an actor who wanted to say, I'm going to just do the black thing in every chance I get, he certainly had his experiences. He just didn't, he was a full human being. But in this case, he said, what am I apologizing for? And that was maybe easier for some of us to understand who'd kind of grown up in the civil rights movement and stuff. For Danny and Hal, they were more on the tail end of that sort of World War II, where lots of people who had nothing very friendly to do with each other found themselves serving together. So there was a kind of, you're a Guinea and you're a Wop and you're a Jew and you're kind of the good natured, that sometimes we may see an old YouTube of Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra razzing Sammy Davis Jr. And they were doing that bit intentionally to get this great talented guy in before the public eye and all of that, but still the razzing sometimes, it makes you kind of want to, slap your forehead but that's where we were as a society, Mm-hmm. And but he had a point, and we stopped, and that's expensive time to stop, and we had a long conversation about it, and Danny was really struggling to understand, but finally did, that he should not have to apologize. Mm-hmm. For this circumstance that everybody knows goes on, and I think that's where there's a lot of confusion, and sometimes people take Black Lives Matter as a direct poke, and well, it is a kind of like, hey, you know, it's a leveling of conversation. It's not placating. It's not blaming. It's not, you know, going into
Yeah.
sort of computer objective mode. It's leveling. But you know, that's why life is, especially when we have to have difficult conversations. We need to be able to level with each other. And so I remember that with a sense of, you know, we're trying to do something really meaningful to us and everybody else. And but a lot of the other moments, we just had some great laughs,
Hmm.
and you know,
Uh,
another answer with no soundbite. Don't get that guy started. Go ahead,
another
Brian.
another question I got for you. Let's see. Okay, a movie you were in back in, and I'm fixing to give you a plug too. You didn't know about a movie you were in back in 1983, the year I was born, called DC Cab. You got to work with Mr. T.
Yeah.
How was that? And also, folks, DC Cab will be released on Blu-ray December the 1st. You can pre-order now.
People are still using Blu-ray, huh? That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was okay. I mean, it was a fun experience. When I met Joel, you know, to kind of beat and talk about the part. Sometimes you don't read, you meet because you're not supposed to, you know. But anyway,
Yeah.
and you know, I felt that it was I thought there was a possibility for a kind of a comedy looking at the whole Washington scene
Mm-hmm.
that in many ways would be like Barney Miller, you know, a lot of different perspectives and stuff, and it could be the beginning of a franchise. You know, it was actually written by Topper and Alice Carew and based on a black cab company called Capital Cab.
Mm-hmm.
But as Universal got a hold of it and they opened it out to more diverse characters and stuff, and my friend Gary Busey was in it. I already knew Gary, you know, so. But you asked about Mr. T because even though it was billing in alphabetical order and all of that, T blew up during that time.
Yeah.
You know, he was, you know, and
Tag
Rocky.
team and
You know, it became like, you know, so when they put out the posters, even though everybody's name is the same size and in, I think, alphabetical order or something like that, you know. Sometimes you got to do that to get a whole lot of different people, and you can't work out who's got a bigger name and all those things that go into billing, and but they made, you know, the Mr. T, you know, you know, and you know, he was, I mean, it was T and the Barbarian brothers, who were twin brothers who were also weightlifters and were huge, you know, and so they had their energy going on. And T, you know, I remember he somewhere early on he picked up a bumper, and he just carried this bumper around all the time. And you know, I mean, in time, you can't help but develop a certain affection for the guy and a sense of his own particular genius. You know, that word genius, originally it was like everybody has their genius. Everybody has their own special, you know, hand of giftedness they've been dealt or whatever, you know. And so he had his own qualities that he'd stuck with, his own principles of doing things, you know. He had a kind of a gentleness, you know. But there was a bunch of comedians on that set, and for the most part, it was a whole bunch of people trying to top each other. You know, all the group scenes and stuff. It was, you know, it was. And I remember my wife Willie at the time, who was very pregnant, and she, you know, she didn't have much patience for him, especially. Well, you know, she was around the set, and I remember we got in a conversation. She says, the man's a donkey, you know. Now Willie grew up in black rural Texas, and then in Houston in the ghetto, you know. I said, well, you have to understand, you know, like, you know, he comes from, you know. She says, hell with that, I'm from there, you know. The man's a donkey. You know, but you know, I mean, a lot. with us, with everything, she had a wonderful acceptance of, you know, everybody in a way. So it was kind of like she wanted him, and she would let him know it, to just let more of that stuff out that he kind of hid underneath the, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, you know, again, other than when he bought his property outside of Chicago and he cut a bunch of trees down, I went, oh, T, when I saw all the trees down in his backyard, you know. I went like, T. But yeah, you know, if I saw him right now, I'd be happy to see him, and I think it would be mutual, you know.
Yeah, he was always a very cool character to me on the A team. You know, when I sent him on the A team,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
He'd say, "I ain't getting on no plane, you fool." You know.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
And my daughter, India, you know, who's now 37 and has almost 4-year-old, well, 3.5-year-old twin girls. But she got into lifting but early on she was into Arnold and T. We went to one of those, whatever it was called, where they were showing the older shows, which are some of them still showing, and they're even older, you know. But you know, and I remember that with the fact that I knew Mr. T, that kind of like, you know. So.
I got a fan comment for you. Malcolm Wildman. He said he sends you his best to you. He thanks you for one of the coolest guys he has ever met, and he liked you on Whiz Kids. He said if you talk to Hal Linden, tell him Malcolm says hey, and to follow up on that, Chris Wilkerson wanted to know if you and Hal Linden still stay in touch with each other.
Yeah, we do. It's been a while. It's, you know, but the last time I saw Hal, we were actually doing one of those autograph signing events, you know, which is where I first met Sue. I had known Sue online, but
oh wow!
And so it gave us a couple of days to hang out together, and you know, I always had a kind of a strange feeling. You know, fan is short for fanatic. You know, and I grew up being noticed going into a restaurant because I grew up in this family. When our family would walk into a restaurant, and there were all these kids in close in age, and it would just it would cause a stir, which was always just something you just kind of had to put up with. And so early on, when Barney Miller, you know, went on the air in those days with 3 networks and PBS, if you were in a primetime show, it was a pretty much overnight change in your life. And so a lot of times there were people who, you know, it wasn't so much that they had that much feeling about the show. Sometimes they did, but sometimes it's just the fact that you walked in and you were on TV. You know, so they'd come over and interrupt dinner with your family or whatever, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, and so I made up this poem that I still remember that I would share with people. And it goes, it seems like such a silly game to take a pen and write my name. My signature is no surprise, and I can't write and see your eyes. See how you might feel today, hear what you might have to say. And that to me is such a shame to not see you, but just my name. And they would listen, because if you listen to my, they'd say, okay, all right, that's nice. They'd say, that's nice. Now can I have your autograph?
That's beautiful, though.
Well, it's how I felt, you know, because I also grew up in the Midwest with very outgoing parents and a certain amount of thing where, you know, so it's natural to want to get to know somebody, you know, and it's natural to, if people share that they have some connection, you know, I as soon as I can, I try to turn that around. Well, what do you do? You know, I really do. I want to get sort of past that to where is our connection, you know, but you know, it's you know, the thing I learned from going to that is those are people, often very more introverted people that might not get up and go and talk to you in a restaurant or, you know, but they're there And it's in a way what you're doing and what people that really have been drawn to the show or whatever you've done, and personally you have a connection, so there's some vibrational thing, because we can only bring our own self to, even if the character is wildly different, it's still coming, you know, and that can be really meaningful. You know, I've learned to just to not be so be that way about it, you know, and so I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And also, I seen two other fan questions in the comments. Joshua Dixon wanted to know if you were aware of the other character on Young and the Restless who's got the Alzheimer's storyline. They're going to be ending her storyline tomorrow. And somebody else also asked what your favorite or funny moment was on General Hospital.
Okay, well, to the first one, I was aware that there was a story. I didn't know if it was still going on.
Okay.
Somebody mentioned it to me. I don't watch the other shows. I don't even watch all of General Hospital because I just, you know, I got grandkids and stuff, and I've at a certain point, I love watching the scenes and other actors in storylines that I have nothing to do with. But when I'm in there, I mean, they all kick butt, you know, given the time they have to work it. It's not like a movie where we've done, you know, a whole bunch of different takes, and by the time they come in for your close-up, you're just really got it nailed. It's not like that at all. But at the same time, it's about being, you know, just out there with the others and giving it up. So, so I don't really know, you know, anything about that other than I think it's great that they're doing a storyline. I'm sure they've touched a lot of people as well. And there was another part to that question.
They wanted to know what your do you have a funniest memory on General Hospital? Something funny that happened?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of humor on the set because in a way the soaps are about tears, right? For the most part, they're about tears. Even the jokes are kind of sentimental jokes, you know. They aren't really set up or written to be like, you know, the cameraman can hardly keep from laughing sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I had an occasion that made this something really stand out that I'd like to share. I had auditioned a couple of times for a pilot that ended up getting on the air. It's been canceled since. It was called The Cool Kids. And they brought me in a couple of times. I could not find a handle on the character. It was eventually played by an actor from Detroit named David Allen Greer, is it?
I think I heard
you know, he was in Living Color, I think, you know, one black actor. It's great at my age, and in these times I go in and it's not always all white guys, right, reading for the part. But you know, he is a master at playing people who cover their insecurity with a lot of bravado. I don't feel very good at that. I don't think I don't quite, you know, to me it's not, just comes off like an asshole, excuse me, you know. And but anyway, you know, and then I got the call to come in to read for General Hospital, and which wasn't really a realm that I knew much about, but I looked up Mo on IMDb, you know, and I saw some of his work, and I saw what he had done with his own bipolar circumstances or diagnosis or whatever, you know, and how he brought that. Yes, it's a wonderful book.
Yes,
I would recommend that book to anybody.
It is great.
So so I went in and read, and we, as I said earlier, we connected right away, and it ended up being a great experience. But I did get a call one time from Cool Kids, and they had decided to add a scene or something, and could I come in the next day for the camera blocking and then shoot the next day. So sure, I'll get paid for a week, and I only work a day and a half, and I'll get to see what it's like. And this was before they were on the air, but they had their pickup. They had you know, it seemed like hundreds of people on the set, you know, and then for the show they had the audience and the, you know, and with the you know, 30 writers going along, and you finally do thing is
Yeah.
written, and all the other writers, now let's try this line, let's try, and this opulent craft services, craft services on General Hospital is coffee. For those that don't know, that's the food they put out to try to
That
keep
isn't
people from
Corinthos
wandering
coffee.
off. Pardon me?
That isn't Corinthos coffee, is it?
I, that's a good question. That's a good question. But this was like, of course, it's only on shooting night, but it seemed like, every half hour there was another toll change, and now it's platters of shrimp and everything. And there was a lot of tension.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tension. There was laughter in the scenes, and but after a while, the audience, you can tell they're getting kind of tired, and but it was
Yeah.
just my experience of it was tension. Now I come back on the General Hospital set, and there's a lot of emotion in the playing, and people are not only holding those emotions, but they're also holding, like, they've just had one kind of shot as, where am I supposed to be here, and when am I supposed to close the door, and what,
Mm-hmm.
and which cameras, how do I can't step over here because I'm going to block the shot on so and so. There's a whole lot of things people are thinking about, and at the same time letting go and playing it. And there's a lot of wonderful teasing about people's acting,
Mm-hmm.
about their, whatever it is. It's unmistakably loving and generous, but it is also no holds barred. Especially the guys like Steve and Mo and people that have been working together for a long time. But it's a wonderful thing. I don't remember a big laugh in any of the scenes that I did or saw on the soap.
Okay. My next question, I wanted to ask you. Now, I don't even know if you still have this or not, but I saw this on Wikipedia, so I thought I'd ask about it. Can you tell us about the production company Full Circle that you run?
Yes. Okay. All right. So as I was, when I was doing Barney Miller, of course, there was no social media or anything, and
Mm-hmm.
if you had, that kind of position, so that you were getting interviewed with People Magazine or TV Guide, or whatever it happened to be, for a lot of people it was like, well, how do I use this? What do I do with this? I remember my first TV Guide article, and and the guy wrote a story that was like his idea. He had this idea of the story before we even met. I was from Grosse Ile, Michigan, which was an island down in kind of where the Detroit River flowed into Lake Erie, in downriver Detroit. So downriver Detroit is the two black communities and then two all white communities, all factory towns and foundries, and
Oh wow.
and then out into farm towns. And so we were kind of on the cusp of that.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to say I was from Grosse Pointe, because the Grosse Pointe is up on the other side of Detroit on Lake St. Clair, and it's a very wealthy community that if you have money and you're not Jewish, you could live in then. And there were a number of things that I just felt like he's got this story. Max is really smart. I went to Williams College. It often gets picked as the top college in the country, even though it's not very well known. But and Wojo was dumb, but I didn't like that idea of Wojo was dumb. I think I like the way they say about Poles and Indians, and they think more with their heart. I mean, he wasn't sophisticated in a certain self-aware way, but sometimes people who aren't all sophisticated are the ones who actually ask the question that all the sophisticated people don't ask,
That's
because they're
true.
so sophisticated they know nobody asked this, and that
Yeah.
Danny picked up on. I mean, he got that about it. So Wojo would be the one that would notice that there was no evacuation plan for New York, so that sort of thing. And help me guide me back to the question again, because I'm
Can
starting
you
to.
tell me about the production company
Yes. Okay. But it was, it was difficult because you try to get a point in, but that wasn't what they were doing, and it finally, in a way, it came to a head to me where the headline in a People magazine article put me in opposition with one of the great producers in town, but was producing a miniseries based on a novel called Hanta Yo that had been written by a non-Indian woman, but it was kind of like the roots of Native Americans in a way. It was built and stuff like that. And I felt like there was a value in doing the interview. And I brought my friend, well-known Lakota medicine man, John Fire Lame Deer, brilliant guy who met with the Dalai Lama and the Pope, and but that's as a way to bring out some of the points, but it was just became Wojo versus, I forget the producer's name now. They just built it as a confrontational and stuff. So meanwhile, portable video was starting to show up. And most of the news stations that had a budget for it had these new remote cameras. There was no satellite, but they had a camera and a big box, heavy box with a 3/4 inch tape that was way, you could put six phones in there with better technology, and it's got a computer in it that's better than any computer any individual. It's a different time. But I found then the 1/2 inch stuff was just making it out. Hadn't gotten in the stores yet, but they were seeding out what became the go-to consumer video. But and I felt like we could take this around to some of the places that I was going in my off time anyway. Might have been on a reservation somewhere. Might have been at a benefit concert, in Seattle or Chicago, or that there was a story to be told there. And kind of like Charles Kuralt on the road, if Saturday Night Live had come in and changed that time period, with a more different sensibilities than anything else that had been on, I thought this could be a kind of traveling, sharing docu-musical sort of form. And I used to pitch that to the network execs, who would come over and watch us tape Barney Miller. They had the A-Team as their #1 show. We were always like 10, 11, 12, but we got the Peabody Award. We were their grown-up show. And I would pitch them, that time right after, a costume from Johnny Carson where you could never find an audience. I got this idea, In the end, that was the year of the hostage crisis in Iran, and Nightline was born. So something happened in that time period that, went on for 40 years or whatever, So I knew I wasn't going to get that. But anyway, that's what we started doing. And I formed a production company to do that called Full Circle. And in the end, it was too radical for the network. I mean, it was part of my deal for the last year was, I'd get some money to do that. But I think they thought it would be more like John Denver had a show about polar bears. I think they thought, Wojo's going to look at Hopi pottery. But I was looking much more at kinds of ways in which the, original people here who had treaties and agreements with our government, that are a part of the Constitution. And, but had, during that time, there'd been this kind of reassertion of those sovereignty rights, that they were sovereign nations within a nation. And so there were times where people were in conflict with the law, not so much about I broke the law because I robbed this person or I beat that person up or, And I felt like there was a story that if people heard it, I saw if people just had a chance to experience what was going on there, and that music was a great way to do that and all that. So that's what I set about to do. It was still too radical for them, I guess, in a way, or I couldn't figure out how to condense it down into an hour long, for whatever it went on. And then my life took those other changes that I told you about after doing that. I did do Whiz Kids. That subject came up a while ago, didn't it? You know? And which was a wonderful experience with the kids. Just to answer that question, but different because it was a Universal Studios production. Barney Miller was a little We were an independent production. So there were certain ways that the kids were dealt with, and the way the whole thing was dealt with, you know, that was very troubling for those kids. Most of them didn't really have ongoing careers after. Even Matthew Laberto, you know, who's incredibly gifted, but he's mainly doing voiceovers now or something. And I had a lot of trouble with that on that show. And but I
Max,
you know, go ahead.
what we're gonna do is we're gonna end the stream really quickly, and then we're
Okay.
gonna come back live because I'm getting a notification that it's gonna cut off in 1 minute and 13 seconds. Because they only give you like you know a certain amount of time. We're gonna
If
end
you
it
want to
real-
do it, I'm enjoying their questions, and you're letting me answer them. You know, in a way that, you know.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it too, but I gotta.
All right.
We got 57 seconds. They'll cut us off, so we'll come right back.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So sorry about all this. I tell you, this Instagram is crazy. Okay, just click accept, Max. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Hey, man, I tell you, this technology is something else.
Well, I guess it's like everything else. It's simple if you know how to do it.
Yeah, it can be complicated though. Trust me.
What do you want? Do you want me to be in portrait mode like this?
Yeah.
Does this work better? Okay.
That way everybody will see you sideways. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, okay. All right, let me
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. Instagram cut you off after a certain amount of time. I had no control over that. But we are back, and I'm gonna get Max back in here, so we can continue this great conversation here on the WSE Lounge, Part 2. Okay. Hey, Sue, thanks so much for joining back. We'll get this conversation picked up right where we left off. I think Instagram, turn up the microphone, okay? It's up as far as it'll go, Joshua. Is that any better? Can you hear me any better? Okay, I just sent Max an invite. Okay. Hey, Mom, Sunshine Redeem. Okay, let's see if hopefully he sees the live. Okay, sorry about that, Joshua. Can everybody else hear me pretty clearly? Okay, there he is. Let's go ahead and get Max back on the camera here. And we'll get this view back up and running. Okay, just press accept, Max, and you'll be back on here.
got it.
There we go. Okay, great. Okay, just continue where you were talking, if you can remember what you were saying. I know you.
Yeah. Okay.
Quiz Kid.
Yeah. So because you'd asked about Full Circle. So Full Circle was the name because the notion I had was that we would travel. You know, we'd go to the places I was going anyway, but with video cameras, and make them available to you know, like kind of coordinate with other people, because at that time with portable video showing up, a lot of people who had been making documentary films, where they would use, you know, every spare inch of their 16 millimeter film because the film was expensive and getting it developed was expensive. With video, I mean, you could shoot over it. You know, it was so it was transforming things, and I just felt there was a way to help a story tell itself, and that's where the name Full Circle came up, because it was as much about looking at Indians as it was about what does the world look like from an Indian point of view, from a native point of view, you know. And those of us who were born here, and all of the molecules in our body came from here, you know, and all, even if we were raised in a way that we weren't taught what went on here or what, you know. So anyway, that was the idea of Full Circle. And as I say, it was just not about to happen when the show ended, and then my life changed in the way that it did, and it kind of went on the back burner for a good while. Not that I didn't keep trying to figure out how to make this work, and then the time came where it was, you know, there was the internet had existed. When I was doing WizKids, that's when there was still the World Wide Web existed, but it was still a little awkward and pretty much used by, and well, the way it was intended amongst the scientists to share papers and that sort of thing. But other people were exploring, well, what if we made it easy for people to get on this way? And there were some what were called walled gardens, like America Online, where they'd make it easy to speak within that realm. And the browser was first being developed by some college students in Indiana in Illinois called Mosaic. But around that time, we got a computer in the house, and I felt like, as many people did, even people who were already involved in all of this, you know, that here's a great chance for us to have a better conversation as a species. People can talk to each other without prejudice. You know, you don't know that that's an overweight person of color you're talking to, or what, you know. My take was like, why don't we get to where that doesn't matter, you know? But there were lots of very people out there creating really positive ways, but it was clear that people had to get their hands on it, and not everybody had the disposable income to buy an Apple or what, you know. And but I felt like, okay, so that whether it's inner city or on the res or rural areas and bandwidth, and there were all these issues, but I felt like, you know, what if there was a kind of a show, a TV show, a place-based comedy, like they call a Barney Miller or Cheers or something. It's set in a place, in a real town. You know, it kind of has its own place-based. And and at that time there were it was a bit of a depression we were in, so there was a whole lot of excess retail space in malls. And I thought, what if there was a kind of a show that had elements of, you know, a Barney Miller or a Cheers, but at the same time it was connected with these other places. I came to call them local access places, because I like that acronym LAP. The word has so many meanings, you know. It's a storytelling place. It's one of the ones that's this fell in my lap, or this is, you know, our domain of care and responsibility. It has a lot of it going around the circle, you know. But so I thought, what if there was a show that then had elements that would be like America's Funniest Home Videos, you know, which only existed because people had cameras and recording machines now, you know. And it had sort of cheesy parameters, so it was pretty much about watching Uncle Wally fall off the dock and Aunt Doris's skirt blow up and stuff, you know. But what if it was more about people, you know, telling the stories in their community and stuff, and helping people to get access to these tools and all of that? And I thought that's the path that's the path I want to get on. And all of those videos kind of led me to that. Led me in trying to figure out this is still, in a way, by the time it got to early 1990s, the video was even more relevant in a way, because a lot of the things that are really about, you know, that was in that understanding is that we're all related. We're related to each other, and we're related to all of life. All life is spiritual. It's all, you know, so that's where I was going with it. But you know, and I was able to, you know, use the fact that I could get in and meet the Secretary of Education
Mm-hmm.
and HUD, and and I found that there were people already doing what they called community technology centers in Harlem and at the Little Red Schoolhouse on the Lakota Reservation, and there I was not alone. I was finding a whole world of people, but at the same time, we were headed down this path to the bifurcation that we have now. To the kind of split that we have now. But I found, that it was a great experience doing that and meeting people. And over time, I learned, wow, even when people meet at a big conference, it's all about getting together, getting all the parks together, or whatever it is. We've lost that ability or way to just kind of circle up and share.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people will roll our eyes at a little bit of a circle because it's associated with 12-step programs or with, they kind of, well, how are we going to do anything really serious if we're all going to go around and listen to everybody, but actually that's the way people think together. That's the way you can hold a conversation with a center instead of sides. And I found that I was doing that. I say, okay, if lap is the notion, all of our problems that we have are in our laps, our collective lap. All of the solutions are there too. How do we find that together? And so I say you put the notion in motion by running laps. Anytime you can be looking, interacting with that in mind, and then to the idea of lap in. Say lap in because I say, well, there was the first sit in. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Say, what is a sit in? And then there were love ins and be ins, and there was a TV show called Laugh In, and there's something about that kind of noun verb, and so I started with this idea of lap in. I say it's an open invitation and intention to open heart, open mind. And I mean that open like the verb to open it, but also to the place where it's open,
I like
open heart, open mind, open source. That's an idea that really has been around forever, but it kind of came with the technology. It came back again. Open source is nobody owns it. Anyone can improve it. Everyone can use it when something's done open source. And open space is the idea that, that we can open up the space for, we don't have to say this is going to be a debate. This is going to be, we kind of default to argument or to get only coming together to say how bad we can agree somebody else is, Open heart, open mind, open source, open space, open game. And the idea of that is there are zero-sum games, where you can only have a winner or a loser.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are open games, which life is, where you can have outcomes of win-lose. You can also have win-win. And you can also have lose-lose. In a zero-sum game, you can't have win-win. But you can also have win-lose. And if you play a game like it's a zero-sum game, and it's not, then you're biasing the whole system toward lose-lose. Because you like, well, if he's losing, I must be winning. If he's winning, I must be losing. So you make your decisions based on, and some, elections are zero-sum games. There's only going to be one person elected president, no matter what,
Yeah.
And somehow the rules of the game say that, even if it's kind of clear that it's not clear, but life is an open game. It's more like a wave in the stadium. It's a game that people participate in, and so that's kind of been my through line. And one of the things I'm working with Sue, who's been a great help in getting a fan page together, and she knows a lot more about the technology than I do, and she's got a younger mind, so she can, it wouldn't take her as long as it took me to get back on and all of that. But we're going to be putting out that invitation to hold conversation. We can't meet in person, but I've learned that it is possible to get a sense of a circle with people using Zoom or other things, and just basically share that way of coming together, where somebody's a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
We say, who's running the meeting. Problems with that word running, whatever, but I say pilot because then you can have co-pilots. You can have a peer facilitated, you're all doing it together. But to go with that, where you go around the circle and then you go around again, and then you go around again, you know, and you can, the circle makes up the decision. If we got 30 people with 3 hours, well, that'll determine how much time we have everyone speak. I like to have everybody come in and first say your name and put in a good word. So everybody has spoken into that circle and they said their name, and you can use the same good word someone else did, but you know, love, openness, truth, honesty, you know, whatever it is, then you're saying, I'm looking to bring that, I'm looking for that, I'm looking to support that, you know. But it's those conversations that often happen on their own amongst people and are a part of the traditions in most cultures to how to come into counsel with each other, you know. That I feel like this is a time that we can transcend and enfold these conflicts that we have, which are, you know, being dealt with pretty much. When I was a kid, when someone called a name, they'd say, "I know you are, but what am I?"
Yeah.
You're a jerk. I know you are, but what am I? Well, that's kind of what we get reduced to, you know. And
Yeah.
and we're not gonna solve these real challenges that we have for ourselves and our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids. You know, we're not gonna find solutions to that by what's going on now. So
True.
that's
True.
full circle. Still coming
Okay.
around to all of that.
And I just want to say before I go to the next question, I think it's wonderful how you support the Native American Indians. I've always loved Indians, and you know, there's not enough of them, but I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I from the beginning when I got involved, because I was very visible, you know, I would get, he's done so much for our people and all that. It's for me, if I had to evaluate, which is where is the most flow of understanding, you know, not just, you know, like I say, I was an economics major, you know. Well, there's a whole other understanding of how we, you know, use and distribute goods and resources that keep the world going in a good way. And you know, so but I think a lot of people have that feeling. They just don't understand how it's connected to what's going on now. And I have something I'd like to share with you, if
Okay.
I could do that, if we're all
That's
right. And this, you know, I knew I wanted to share this with you when you were explaining to me grace, you know, and grace is sufficient. And if maybe you might want to just say that again for anybody who's on this call that doesn't know you, you know. I doubt that, but that would be, if, you know.
Okay. For anybody who don't know me, grace is sufficient. The reason I have it as my Instagram name is because, you know, I believe God's grace is sufficient. I've had a total of 12 heart surgeries, as I was telling Max. And, you know, when I was born, they said I had 5 holes in my heart. I'd never lived past infancy. And here I am 37 years later, and I'm here by the grace of God. So that's why my name is Grace is Sufficient.
So I really thought that was beautiful, because it's easy for people to get hooked into a particular way that their church or their congregation or their religion or whatever talks about things that are actually, you know, they go off into mystery. That's why we look up when we say God, because there's something just beyond the beyond we can even imagine, you know. And
Right.
and I really, for me, you know, was my own, as to say, being raised in the local. At the time, it was the only there was a Protestant church and a Catholic church, and we lived right next door to the rectory. So, you know, there was a familiarity to all of that, but also something that was not being said that was helpful about Vietnam at the time, or civil rights, or girls for that matter. You know, there was kind of like one story that everybody sort of droned agreement to during the service, and then there was what else was going on. It wasn't really until I found myself with Native people and ceremony that I began to understand, what it's all about. And so I wanted to share one of my poems, or it's a lyric because I have music to it, but I'm not going to sing without a keyboard. And I realized fairly soon as it was started showing up, because that's kind of how they happen for me. There's more like I'm given and can take responsibility than take so much credit. But the thing was that it was, in a way, it was a form of the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Lord's Prayer has a lot of forms. There are a lot of people have fought wars over whether we use this word or that word. When the Lord's Prayer was done at the giving Mike his last rites in General Hospital, they used a particular phrasing, that a lot of people hadn't heard, and for science geeks, Buckminster Fuller, one of the great sort of engineering thinkers, once wrote along, forever rethinking the Lord's Prayer. He put all of the thoughts that are there, which, as I understand the story of it, was when Jesus was telling his disciples, I'm not going to be here much longer.
That's right.
And they were going like, oh, what do you do? What do you mean? We don't even know how to pray. He says, sure you do. It's easy. You just, and he kind of put that out there. So there's something universal in it, in a way. Mm-hmm. But for me, it showed up, and early on there were two things in there. And one was this notion of for all my relations. In the Lakota have a word, matakweasin. It's usually translated as for all my relations, but it could be translated, we are all related. It's an expression of relationship. And so it's kind of where amen or hallelujah fits in a way. Someone wants to explain to me that that's actually the prayer. Everything that somebody says up until then is kind of gathering thoughts and cares and stuff, but that's and the other thing that showed up was this, in the beginning was the word. And even though I went to my Bible class, and my first thought was, is that Genesis in the beginning? I'd heard it, but I'd really never given it a lot of thought. Mm-hmm. And I began to explore that, and I learned it was from the Gospel of John, and that most people consider that the most mystical, and I'm drawn to the mystical side of things and the mystery. I'm drawn to where the Buddhist monks and the Catholic monks and everything, they got a lot of differences, but they have some things that are really sort of universal and similar. And that's, I'm still on the interview line. And so, I wondered about that. And while I was I learned that that's John. And then somebody sent me a book called Dialogue, written by an MIT professor who has at MIT the Dialogue Project. And he's the one I got that idea of the art of thinking together, or a conversation with a center instead of sides. But he wrote in the beginning of the book, he said people ask about Greek dialogos, through the word. And I said, in the oldest, say, well, what is the word? He said, in the oldest understanding, or the oldest sense of the language of Greece, logos had to do with a sense of gathering up in a context where all things are related. So like I got the image of gathering an armful of wheat out of a field of wheat, but that was it. So he said, if I'm asked what is the word, because there are people that are very proprietary about their version of Christianity, they said, well, that's Jesus. In the beginning was the word was God, the word was with God, and so I'm not like into arguing about that, but this seemed to be a more open, he said, it would be relationship. And right in that moment, I got that this idea that there's Western civilization, which comes from the east of this hemisphere, but we call it Western civilization, and the Western hemisphere thinking we're never going to meet because they were just too far apart. One was good and the other was bad, and each side kind of held that, but I got, no, this is an insight into what it's all about, relationship, so, but it goes like this.
Okay.
And I'm thankful for a chance to share it. It goes, first verse is a little introductory, but it's a prayer. And there's a saying about poems I think is true about people who recite poems in public, you could also say it about pray in public, may have other nasty habits. I I think it's good to bear in mind, that we're all human. But anyway, saying that, it goes, Creator supplied us with spirit to guide us through things that divide us, to love light inside us, in the children playing, in the parents praying, in the old ones saying goodbye. In the beginning, they say, was the word. In the heart song, let it be heard. Creator, creation of all my relations, your names are sensations of your emanations. We work, we play, we feel you, we pray. You show us a way we can live. Feed us today. Please don't lead us astray. Give us heed in the way we forgive. For beyond the kingdoms and powers and glories, you are the whole of the circle, the soul of the stories, the Father, the Mother, the one and the other of all that can live and can be. History holds us in patterns of pain. The mystery still sets us free. So humbly we thank you for all you have given, for loved ones who light up the lives we are living, for the children playing, the parents praying, the old ones saying goodbye. Each true beginning renewing the word, in the heart song, let it be heard.
That is beautiful, Max. Beautiful. That was so inspiring to me. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so
when you share with somebody, you hear it, and that experience of sharing it. So, and I have one other comment I want to ask you, because it's not, as you remind me of someone.
Okay.
You only look, if you put up a whole spectrum of humanity there, you'd be in the same category. So you look a little like him, but your soul, you remind me of John Prine. I don't know if you know John Prine, one of our great songwriters and, spiritual leaders in his own way. So
I don't think I do. I don't think I do.
You don't know John Prine's? Hello in there.
Yes,
Just look up John Prine and listen to some of his songs.
I'll look him up.
Yes, he died. He died recently, but not without being acknowledged as one of the great songwriters of our times.
I wanted to mention something to you. You were mentioning wait a minute. Matter of fact, I think I mentioned that to you earlier. Let me see. Did I? No, I haven't. I wanted to mention something to you. You was talking about. I kind of look like John Prime. Well, I was Googling pictures of you, and I saw a picture of you with long hair and glasses, and you looked exactly like Christopher Lloyd. Has anybody ever told you that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've gotten that a lot, especially when my hair is long and kind of wild. Yeah. I've gotten that a lot. And the funny thing, I know Chris. He did a couple of Barney Millers before Taxi. Really? Yeah. Wow. And he's an extraordinary. He's just on his own level.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a Facebook exchange or something. But I made some kind of joke. Something came up, and I made a joke about I've fielded a lot of compliments for you or something like that, and apparently I played in the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson. I played the part of the manager, the guy that came in and took over, so I had glasses on and anyway, he came back. He said to me, I get a lot of compliments for 42. So I guess it happens to him. I can see it. We both got these faces that sort of wander all over the place. And we're both kind of out there we like to express what's going on for us in that moment. We may have said it before, but we're not. It's not just our stock line.
That's kind of weird too, because Christopher Lloyd back in the early 90s, he was in the movie with Danny Glover, Angels in the Outfield, and he played the angel and wore
Yeah.
glasses. Yeah, he come over.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Donna Day just had a comment. She said, "You did so great on GH, and I wanted to say that I admire you and Maurice for not submitting your performances so others had a chance to win." And she said that was awesome of you both, and we all know you would have got it.
Well, maybe, you never know for sure.
Yeah.
That was last year. I'm getting a lot of people. A lot of people have been saying that we should submit this year because it will help support the story and the show. And having done that, so I think I will if I haven't missed the opportunity, and I think Mo will too. Yeah, yeah. It was more. There was part of the decision for me was that they didn't intend for the character to last that long, but there was such a response to the storyline. And so right after, the Emmys, they did come up with a couple of storylines just to try to fit Mike into Sonny's other pursuits and stuff, And they were a little bit, they just didn't have the same kind of juice. I remembered seeing Sonny bury his first body, and I dug it up, and we went through that whole storyline. But it kind of did I really somehow manage to dig up a grave and lift that body out and get it into the trunk of a car and drive it up to someplace else like this was going to make it, you know what I mean? It was a reach. And in the world, if you look at the world the way it is today, there's that too. So, and I see that even though I have my charger in, I see something that's going, if I disappear, that's what happens.
There you are.
But anyway, I forget the question. I'm sorry. I got distracted.
You were talking about Sonny and the body and.
Oh yeah. I just wasn't sure. I never quite got the thing of getting married to someone in the thing. I felt there were a lot of issues there that we could have dealt with. It would have been very interesting to deal with more directly with some of the issues of that black man and there were things. I mean, it was cool. Soaps were the first to deal with a lot of things, and one of them was interracial couples. And since that was a part of my life, I appreciate that. But I just, but also the main reason was I was talking to Steve, who plays Jason for those. Well, if they know the show, then they know Steve. But who I think is wonderful, and I said something about, it's a funny thing, they say you do such great work. I'm surprised. He said, "Oh, I didn't submit." He said, "No, I just feel like it's a good to leave the field open." And I thought that I like that. I like that way of thinking. So that's what we did. But I think unless I just procrastinate too long or something like that, I think it would be good. I do feel like I was part of a really significant story that touched a lot of people, and the writers and everything, and it all gets honored. They have their separate awards, but it's all part of the same group effort, and anything that helps to bring attention to it. Of course, I could submit and not get nominated, or get nominated and not win. There's always that,
That's true. Now, another friend of mine, I run his fan page on Facebook, similar to how Sue runs your fan page. He actually works at GH, and he said that he got the chance to meet you a couple times. Vic Stagliano, who plays Walker, Cyrus's right-hand man.
Yes.
Well, what was that like getting to meet Vic? Because, he was on Sons of Anarchy, too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's always interesting. You meet people, on a set. You're there to work. So you're looking to be open with each other and connect to each other. At the same time, you both got your things that you have to be paying attention to. And you know, it's so it's a good experience. There is a sense of family and connection. You know, not all families everybody gets along with everybody.
Oh
So
yeah, that's true.
there's that aspect of family too. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's a just like you're meeting family or someone in your tribe. You know.
Now I have a question for you that I don't know that anybody's ever asked you or even thought about this, but I wanted to know when did you kind of feel like on General Hospital that there was a Bernie Mac, I mean not a Bernie Mac, a Bernie Miller reunion and a Fresh Prince of Bel Air reunion when you got to work with Jeanette Hubert, who played Yvonne, and Bernie Watson, who played Stella?
Well, you know, no, not really,
You
because
think so?
we were on TV shows that kind of overlapped, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think that's a question. It's like a lot of times people say, well, what was your favorite? It's
Uh-huh.
like, well, that's a form to put a question in to get somebody to talk about something, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's not necessarily, you know, they're not you know, so reunions, people think in terms of reunions. So I'll just take the question in that way and say
Uh-huh.
that I thought it was interesting, you know, that they cast that. Vernay is, you know, I didn't know that about her. We even go further back. She was in Get Cotter.
Oh.
Vernay was one of the students in Get Cotter, and you know that was
Uh,
contemporary with Barney Miller. And
uh,
also, when I was doing Cuckoo's Nest up in San Francisco, Gabe Kaplan, who was the star of Get Cotter, was a
uh,
stand-up comedian. He was playing the Playboy Club, all
uh,
right there in that area of North Beach. We used to we got to know each other because before going to do our shows, we would meet at a hamburger stand called Clown Alley, you know,
mm-hmm.
and there were you know, other people who were, you know, maybe in town doing
Yeah.
plays or something. But so I knew Gabe in that way. I never met Vernay. One night they had John Travolta and I forget a couple of other people from Cotter come over and get in the
Uh,
cell, and we did a photo op, you know, that the
yeah.
network was looking to promote the show and stuff. But I was struck with Vernay immediately,
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of her presence and her intelligence, you know, and her aliveness, and as she, you know, played the social worker, and she'd already been on. I think she was nominated for. I think she might have won that year too. But anyway, she'd already been on that show, and so I would love that relationship with Mike and you know, Stella.
So her
Um,
name is pronounced Vernay.
Vernay, yes,
Okay. I always thought it was Vernon.
and
I'm glad you
yeah,
cleared.
yeah, and I'm sure she's gotten versions of Vernay.
Yeah.
Uh, and Janet was a little different because, you know, I mean, I didn't, you know, watch a lot of TV, you know, and I didn't. I was certainly aware of Prince of Bel Air, and
Uh-huh.
you know, but I mean, that connection got made as Janet, you know, showed up on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and she had to fly out from New York, and she had to kind of pay her own way there. It's a certain, you know, as I say, it's not like I got deep pockets to keep the soap on the air,
Yeah.
and I think that she had some, you know, there had been, you know, it doesn't always work out with the producers and the, you know, and the pay, and there is a business aspect to it that sometimes leaves people, you know, disappointed, you know, and because disappointment is tied to expectations, you know, and trust is involved there. So I was aware that there was a, you know, that there was a history, but mostly I was, you know, just trying to figure out how to be with, well, what's going on here, you know, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on with their sexuality,
Uh-huh.
because you know, people don't have a hard time like dealing with sexuality when people get older, and sometimes there just isn't any, but a lot of times there is, and you know,
Uh-huh.
what's actually going on here, and then you add in it's very hard to even bring that subject up these days. You know,
Oh yeah.
what might be, you know.
Yeah.
So I felt like there were a lot of things, and there's not a lot of discussion on the soap anyway because there isn't time for it. You know, there just isn't the time to explore what's going on here. You know,
Uh,
and so you know, we never really had any conversations about that, other than I knew that Vernee had some very hard feelings about Fresh Prince, the show, and how she would
mhm.
deal with it.
Okay. My next question comes from Jay Cavini.
Hi,
He's been
Jay.
to he's been to a lot of the soap conventions through the years. Met a lot of different One Life to Live, All My Children, General Hospital people. He he wanted to know two things. He said he was wondering about Battle of the Network Stars. How were they chosen to appear, and how long were they actually on location for this?
Well, that's interesting because that's when I first met Gregory on
Uh-huh.
Battle of the Network Stars. I mentioned Gregory Harrison earlier. I think I did. That he's
Yeah, you did.
coming on the show. I know I also talked to Steve this morning, and you know, I brought that up. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, Gregory grew up out in Catalina, and he's a surfer, and you know, this like impossibly good-looking, well-built, athletic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but also a good guy. And well, I think they put the people who were in their shows. It was all you know, a way to put something on the air that people would watch, and then that would give them more, uh, you know, more PR for their shows. So it was a pretty good deal in that regard. You got you know, you got paid quite a bit of money to go, and I lived in Malibu, and it was shot at Pepperdine over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was took up a Saturday and Sunday, and for the most part, it was kind of fun, you know. And I don't know what else was there. Another part of that question
Uh, he wanted to know how long y'all were on.
on location. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, it was not a location shoot. I mean, there may have been people who actually lived in New York. I think it took place during the season, and almost everything was shot in Los Angeles at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, so it wasn't really so much a location shoot, but it was shot over a weekend.
Okay, and he also had another question. He wanted to know, do you have any memories of the TV movie Curse of the Black Widow?
I do. You know, one of them that comes to mind first is, and I'm sorry I can't say her name right now. It's a
Mm-hmm.
who played who starred in the show. Had been a child actress. Can you say it? Do you have it there?
Was it Donna Mills? It wasn't Donna Mills.
No, no. Well, somebody will come up with it, or
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, she was extraordinary person. She played Helen Keller very early in her life and got huge recognition for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went on as a young gal. She you know, like 21 or something. I mean, pretty young, maybe even younger than that. So I just read something about her recently, but I did, because I hadn't known this, but she got pregnant, and there was a lot of sort of scandal around that. But I just remember her being just so grounded and open and on top of it, and she had all the acting skills in the world, but she also had this great heart.
Patty Duke, who said.
Patty Duke, yes, okay. And then I remember that I played the sort of a helper to Tony Franciosa,
Mm-hmm.
who I really enjoyed working. He is somebody who'd been on TV before I imagined that I would be on TV, and that was kind of cool. And I played a guy named Sparks. I played a guy that was more of a sort of a geek, science geek, you know, more like me, maybe, than mostly what I was mostly getting to play blue collar people, you know.
Just to throw this into the show, a visual, of what Max is talking about. Jay sent me a screenshot last night of Max on the show. Here he is, right here.
Whoops!
Uh-oh.
I knocked my.
You can see that right there. There's Max.
Yeah, that's the one I think got posted that I saw the other day.
Okay.
It's but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, in those days, if you were in a television show and that network was producing a movie of the week, why they would make you an offer. It wasn't you had to go read or anything. I mean, it was all about them promoting their products.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hang on just a second, folks. I think Max's camera is cutting out a little bit. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Can you hear us, Max? Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Max, you there? I think your bandwidth went out a little bit. Okay. Can you? Let's see. Yeah, your bandwidth. I think your bandwidth went out. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Now your bandwidth's cut.
Yeah,
There you go.
I think
There you are. Okay.
the internet spirits may be trying to tell us something. And I've loved this conversation. I could go on and on. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Brian. But you got a couple more you want to wind up with. But both my sweetheart who
Yes,
would like
sir.
to
I
get
do.
back in the van and my 77-year-old bladder are telling me
Oh,
it's getting. I'm cool for
okay.
a couple more, and
Okay.
I'll edit it myself if it from taking too long.
Okay. I got four more and I'm done. Four
All
more
right,
and I'm done.
then let's
Okay.
knock them out.
Okay. Was it hard for you to get in the character of having Alzheimer's on General Hospital?
Well, that's a good question. I I actually had a certain advantage in that a couple of years before I did a play written by a gay playwright who was from Tennessee about a gay playwright.
Yes, sir.
And this guy was a big, strong fellow whose dad, had always had some difficulties with him when he came to understand and know that he was gay. And his dad, one of these guys that was a real churchgoer, or where he was really at home and at peace with his life and his creator, was in the woods. And the opening scene of the movie was kind of a flashback scene where the dad has got his son out in the woods and they've got a coon treed. And he's saying, there he is right there, get him, shoot him, and the kid can't. He could never bring himself to shoot you know. And so then the real sort of play opens on the opening night of his first real big production of one of his plays in Chicago. And his dad shows up that night, and it turns out his dad has got Alzheimer's or dementia of some form.
Uh-huh.
And he's come because he's realized that, you know, he slips out when he kind of comes back into coherence with what's around him. There are times he realizes he's done something that's been destructive or scary or something. He's afraid of what he might do.
Mm-hmm.
And he's come to appeal to his son to take him out of the picture before that happens. That's the story of the play. And the other characters were the son's boyfriend, you know, partner, and an actress who was a friend of his, and you know, so it gave me a chance to work on those attributes, you know, and that experience of what is happening, and it gave me a sense of where to be going. Because when we started, why Mike was, he was in his own denial.
Mm-hmm.
Even in his own denial, the first scene we shot, you know, Maurice has been summoned down to New York by one of the lesser crime bosses, who Mike has been running, you know, cash for him, and he's dropped a payment.
Mm-hmm.
And the son shows up, and then the next morning he goes out for his walk, and he comes back, and he's forgotten that his son was there, but he doesn't cop to that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out walking. I was out doing my thing. You know, he's very defensive. He doesn't remember that he put the money in an ice container. You know, and anyway, that's what leads to. But he had gotten his life together. He'd gotten into Gamblers Anonymous. He was with a woman he met there. That's common. It's a little more of a secular kind of 12-step than AA, but it's still based on those 12 steps you know, so he kind of straightened out that part of his life, but dealing with, so I had a sense of where we were going, how to play it, you know, or how to approach it,
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, and that was a big help, because when you do a play, you're doing the same script over. You do get a chance to kind of get down a little deeper. So. And another really big help, and this is a plug I'd like to make for an organization called Project Lifesaver International. And it was started by police 20 some years ago, using the same tracking technology we use for wildlife to track people who would wander, Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia, sometimes autism. You know, and of course, people have to have something on them, you know, but if they have a wristband or something, and so this goes on at many of the homes and stuff. There are different but this is a community police thing, because the guy that started it, Gene Saunders, and his you know, friends, they realized, wow, a lot of times, you know, it's a very expensive searching for a week or 10 days or more with a very unhappy result. When sometimes we find them and they were like right there, you know, in that closet under the stairs or something. Or particularly with autism, people tend to be drawn to water. So, you know, some huge percentage of the people who wander with autism, you know, end up being found drowned. So there's not a lot of time to waste in finding where there's something that happens, you know. They say they wander, or you say sometimes they're not wandering, they're on a mission. But so I agreed to be an ambassador. There's some other people that are ambassadors. And when I went back last year, this year it was Zoomed and stuff, but last year to be my first year involved with them, there were two things. There were one was they had the people there that go around training cops and other service people by they put you through an experience. They put on earphones with some kind of babble going on, and glasses that distort and take away your peripheral vision, and gloves and a coat and stuff. And so you're kind of cut off. And then they give you 4 tasks. They've got the room set up with a rack of clothes and some luggage and some pills and stuff. And you get like, put the red sweater in the blue suitcase, count out 3 orange pills and 3 red pills, you know, whatever it is, you get it once. And now you got 15 minutes to comply on those, you know, and then you take all that off and go in another room with the same people who are doing this like workshop or training, and talk about these things and experiences and stuff. And it can really be helpful with people that are trying to deal with someone that they don't understand, that person doesn't understand. You know, and it really helped me because now it was getting into the time where Mike was really losing it. You know, he was not connecting. You say, how does he not know? How does he think that's somebody else? How does he, you know, and what is the driving emotional feeling that causes that, you know, kind of desperate sort of rage and fear. And, and the other thing was that there was a panel. So there were, you know, 4 people up on a panel and another guy on the big screen who couldn't get there physically. And he is a man in his early 50s who's the head of one of the Alzheimer's organizations. But he had early onset Alzheimer's. So he had Alzheimer's. And I got to watch him, not just in his presentation, but as he listened to everything. But I remember him saying, you know, as he's talking to people, he says, see, so the world is growing darker and darker around me. You know, it gave me, that really helped me getting into stuff where Mike is sitting in a room and is he listening or is he not listening? Does he hear? Does he not hear? Does he know that that's Sonny? Does he know that's the guy who keeps calling him Pops? Does he, you know, all of these things and what's going on with him in trying to, I know what it's like to be driving down the street at night and then suddenly going like, where am I and where am I going?
Yeah.
You know? And my dad used to say, he'd kind of forget that he told me the same joke when I talk on the phone. He'd say, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time in the hereafter. I find I'm standing in a room wondering, what am I hereafter? You know?
Yeah.
So we have those lapses where our, you know, because we're not really thinking about everything, you know, you're not telling your heart to beat. You're not, you know what I mean? There's so much
That's true.
about life that we're along for the ride.
That's true.
You know, where we live with this idea that we all know what we're doing and all of our ideas are ours and stuff. So that those were my, you know, my path markers. And you know, so and I really tried my best to find something that was, you know, meaningful and real and true, and it was very helpful with the people on the set, for one thing, you know, Jimmy on the sound, and you know, so many people that had, you know, my grandmother, this, my grandfather, my, you know, dad, my wife. There were so many people just right within the show, and then of course I've gotten that feedback from many people, and I really I take it to heart because it's not the same as, yeah, I like that when you did that thing when you threw that guy in the boat in the DC cab, you know, that's a different kind of
it was like a realistic story for so many, and that leads me to my next question, and then the following 2 questions are going to be very short.
Okay.
The next question is, what was it like for you filming the final scene on GH?
Well, it was, I loved the scene. I loved that there was another scene. And I remember I've been talking to Frank and others, and because I know we shot the last when he died, you know, but they said, no, there's one more coming up at the funeral. And I was thinking, that, am I going to be laying there in a box? You know, you know, what is the scene going to be? I thought, well, maybe it's some kind of like what it was. You know, they called me up, Max, we need you to stay. It was sooner. You know, when I got there, they said, we needed to get you right into hair and wardrobe and stuff. And I was trying to watch on the screen. They're doing the funeral and stuff. I wanted to stop and watch Eden sing her song, stuff. And but they said, all of a sudden, they're calling me up. Pardon me?
I said she did beautifully.
Yeah.
Did great.
And then eventually when I got to watch it, I thought it was, you know, it was a beautiful, you know, retelling of the whole story. And so I thought, well, I thought I had more time than this, and I'm trying to find my pages, and get up there, and I walk onto the set, and all of a sudden, and it's all dark in the middle of all the sets, so all I can see is the silhouettes of a whole bunch of people, and Frank says, Max, we're all, because everybody else was, they were ready to let go, but they're waiting for me to come up.
We got 1 minute and 37 seconds left.
Okay, so I got a chance to say goodbye, and then everybody left, and we did our scene, and I loved the scene. I loved working with Sonny, with Maurice, and then that was that.
Okay.
Hang up my clothes and go home. Go ahead.
Really quickly, would you ever consider being on State of Mind that Maurice Bernard does?
Oh, sure. Yeah, in a heartbeat.
Okay, and the last question. We got
it's a good show, by the way.
Yes, it is. Where can our listeners connect with you online?
Well, I'm on Facebook. Sue has created this Facebook fan page. That's where I would send you. And that lap in and going, we're going to be looking to do it to run laps, to lap in and find a way to create that circle online so people can find out maybe what their connections are with each other.
Okay.
They all share that in common, but maybe they have things for each other. That's what I would like to find.
Well, thank you so much, Max.
All right, Brian.
I'm humble. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll stay in touch. God bless you.
Good. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
How do I turn it off?
Hospital, and I'm also playing Trevor Kraft on Penny Dreadful, and I'm here